Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of the Fintech Diaries. And for those new here, I'm Jack, a recruiter focused on the UK's financial technology sector. My role keeps me closely connected to the fintech world, and at MCS, we pride ourselves on our innovative approach to recruitment. Over the past few months, I've had the privilege of speaking with some of the brightest minds in fintech, including CTOs, founders, and other senior leaders to bring valuable insights to the tech community. Today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Jack Spargo, and he's the CTO of CTRL ALT. We are a fintech company specializing in alternative asset solutions. CTRL ALT is revolutionising the way that we access alternative investments by offering cutting-edge tokenization and fractional asset platforms. Jack and I delved into his journey through technology, the challenge of scaling CTRL ALT, and how their innovative solutions are actually opening up new investment opportunities in sectors like green energy and real estate. And finally, look, we closed off by discussing the current uncertainties around blockchain and I suppose look how it could be utilised properly and securely in the near future. Stay tuned to hear more from our conversation. Good afternoon, Jack. Thanks very much for joining me. It's great to have you on.
Hi, Jack. Thanks for having me on a podcast. Good to see you.
Oh, good. So I suppose just before we get stuck into the business you represent and things like that, do you mind sharing a bit of information with regards to your background into technology and I suppose what led you to become the CTO at CTRL ALT?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I've been working in technology for about 12 years. I actually started off my career doing technology consulting. So really, I guess, some distance away from sort of software engineering directly, but a lot of kind of project management and requirements gathering and sort of just very generic, as you maybe expect fresh out university to be. I didn't actually study computer science. I studied aerospace engineering. So didn't kind of really realize that I was on the kind of software engineering CTO track for a few years, really. And I sort of just found myself gradually getting the kind of pull towards software development, just found it's where my interest lay. It was always the bit that I was kind of seeking out more and more in my career. So I spent the first 6 or so years Accenture and Deloitte, and that's kind of in Deloitte I was a software engineer sort of first and a consultant second, so it was kind of a good transition that to sort of into software, and sort of realized from there actually that they had a great ecosystem at Deloitte. I found myself working with a lot of startups and in a very sort of startup minded way, and sort of decided when I left there to take the plunge, and I moved to Belfast then, joined Shopkeep in 2017. You might know they were acquired by Lightspeed, and sort of found myself going up the engineering management leadership route there. Really loved that. Really found experience from a whole range of people all across the world. Decided after they were acquired by Lightspeed that I was going to try my own thing. I sort of felt like I had enough experience to jump in and do my own startup. So I founded Gratzi in 2020. Which is a contactless tipping platform. That was a real sort of baptism of fire, doing everything, learning everything through my own mistakes. I felt fairly experienced on the tech side, probably not as experienced as I thought I was, but also, but very inexperienced on the marketing, sales, on the kind of other side of the house. But I really enjoyed that. Really good sort of year, and actually I sold that in 2021 to pay, and that was actually my sort of first CTO gig. So whilst I was sort of founder and CEO of Gratzi, StrikePay, when they acquired Gratzi, they brought me in as their CTO. So that was my sort of first time in the CTO. Learned a huge amount with them. They grew from, I was sort of the first full-time developer with them, although they had a couple of contractors, to growing a team there of sort of 5 or 6 internal engineers, and that was fantastic actually. So when that ended in 2022, decided I wanted to carry on doing that and sort of really loved the CTO role. So I spent about 2 years as a fractional CTO, working sort of 1 or 2 days a week for various startups, some pre-customer, pre-revenue, and some quite well established Series A companies, sort of advising either just across the board as a CTO or in a specific area they needed some attention on. So in the where are we now? In the middle of 2023, I got approached by CTRL ALT to help them with some work. They were trying to transition from an agency to bringing it in-house. And after sort of a month or two of working with them, I realized like they were really onto something. Fantastic team, great founder, great mission and vision, and a really great sort of company culture. So when they offered me a full-time role, I jumped at the chance. And I've been with Control Alt now for just over a year.
Fantastic. Excellent. Some journey that you've been on so far.
Yeah.
Could you give our listeners then an overview of Control Alt, what you guys do, and I suppose can you talk about what sets it apart in the sort of fintech ecosystem, as you like?
Yeah, definitely. So Control Alt, we're building a platform for investing in alternative assets. So I'm sure a lot of your listeners who are well versed in fintech, that will make a lot of sense too. But for those that maybe don't know what that means, alternative assets are really anything that's not traditionally traded on an exchange. So not publicly available. So this might be property or unlisted companies. And a multitude of other sort of financial instruments as well that would be listed as as defined as alternative assets. We were actually the first company to tokenize property. We basically and sort of legally and from a financial engineering point of view, structured it in a way where it could be broken into fractions, and then we were able to sell those fractions to the public. So you could buy a share in a property for as little as £10. I'll come back to that in a bit. Our founders really have got background in investment banking, so Morgan Revolut as well. So they've got really strong sort of pedigree in the intricacies of financial engineering and all the complicated regulatory legal frameworks that go into tokenization and fractionalization. And what we've kind of combined that with now is a really strong engineering and technology function to solve that problem in a way that automates as much as possible, really. So we're at Control Alt, we're building from the ground up, using this background, using this expertise to enable various customers from a range of backgrounds to buy a fraction of an asset, basically. This is something not traditionally available to people as well. So, people had wanted to, properties, a good example to use, you'd have had to buy the whole house or none of the house. Mm-hmm. Obviously that scales really well as well to portfolios of properties or high value properties as well. We can start to break those down. We can issue those as asset and make them available for people to buy, but also I think more importantly is make them available for people to sell as well. So it means that there's suddenly a marketplace where people can buy and sell these assets. The other thing to say on that is we use the blockchain to do this in a really quick, efficient way. So that means we can lower the costs for institutions as well.
Okay, fantastic. Good overview. With regards to then, I suppose, technology in the business, look, as the CTO, obviously you're playing a pretty critical role in shaping the technology strategy there. What are some of the key technologies then that you're leveraging, to drive innovation and growth within the business?
One thing we realized early on is we wanted to be really agile and able to pivot quickly. Whilst we identify there's a huge range of use cases for this, the demand moves and shifts, as the opportunities come in. So from a technology point of view, we made sure that we picked sort of languages and frameworks. We use primarily TypeScript that allow us to make some core decisions and then really easily pivot and change the product. So we actually have, for a small company, we have about 4 or 5 products now, which sounds like a lot for a company that's a few years old. But what that's enabled us to do is really focus on niche problems. So we have an underlying very strong tokenization platform that's the same for everybody, but specific products for specific use cases that are built on top of that platform. And that's been really helpful to us to move in quickly. I think the other thing to say on that as well is that obviously compliance and security are fundamental to our business and extremely important to us. So building this in a way that we give a platform that is robust, secure, and really strong foundation, it means we can be really quick and build products off that. So we can spin up new products, proof of concepts really quickly in a way that doesn't compromise any of the security or regulatory requirements we have.
Excellent. Fantastic. So I suppose on the topic of blockchain, like we've seen blockchain technologies in the industry now for several years. You mentioned there, trust and regulation is obviously a big thing for you guys, but it's also a massive issue within the blockchain industry as such. What's your take on how, I suppose, like the fintech industry can change with the times and, adopt these technologies for the best outcome for all? So, regulators, companies, and I suppose most importantly, end users as well.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting to see the shift over the last few years, and obviously it's going to continue for years to come on how traditional financial institutions and even the kind of larger fintechs used to be very averse to blockchain and cryptocurrencies and any other kind of crypto-based systems, really beginning to warm up to some of that technology. And technology is distinct from some of the use cases that have existed. I think a lot of people would point at sort of NFTs and some of the cryptocurrencies and sort of use those as examples of why it's not relevant to fintech, but actually the underlying technology, the underlying sort of systems in place are absolutely critical to the future of fintech. We use, just to take an example for Control Alt, we use blockchain in our platform as a way of staying compliant in certain geographies and regulatory frameworks. So by what the blockchain does for us is it allows us to decentralize a lot of the records, if you like, so we can point to records that aren't held in our database to prove that someone owns what they say they own. And also it gives transparency to those users as well. So they're not just taking our word for it, that they have ownership of it. They have something they can really, I'm going to say physically see. I suppose it's not physically see, but see in a way that is cryptographically absolute, that they own a certain token that represents their own. And I guess, like, to your question about like the industry changing with the times, I think we've seen, even from where we are, a lot of the large banks sort of very nervous about crypto, very nervous about basically not owning everything, not owning the record. What we're trying to do, like internally, but also through sort of some of our blogs and thought pieces, is sort of help these large organizations understand that transparency and decentralization is actually a very useful tool, and it builds trust in the industry, actually, which I think for many people actually seems counter. A lot of the banks would see cryptocurrency as a way of sort of obscuring what's going on, but we see the blockchain especially as a way of being very transparent about what's going on in the systems. And I think what we're finding as well as the regulators are probably warming up to this faster than the large organizations, actually. So we've had really constructive talks with a lot of regulators around the world who want to do more in this space, and we're sort of helping them do that.
Fantastic. Last couple of questions for me. So the penultimate one being, you've obviously successfully transitioned from being a founding engineer to leading a growing tech team. What challenges have you faced during this sort of transition for yourself, would you say?
I think the big challenges for me around sort of hiring, bringing in those first engineers. It's one thing when you've got a small roadmap, a small product, and it's just you. As a kind of hands-on technical person, I'm often very comfortable in that. I'll often push that too long, as in I'll endure that for too long. So I think definitely that the challenge is knowing when to hire and hiring the right people early on. I think as well, just in terms of something I mentioned earlier on, was about how we tried to make our frameworks and language choices really, we use TypeScript across the board. We use a lot of frameworks that a lot of people will be familiar with to make it easier to get those people. But we also try and make sure that everyone we hire has some level of full stack capabilities as an engineer. So we want to make sure that we don't have a front end team and a back end team, but really that people can flex and move to where the demand is right now. So I mean, just to take a current example, we've shifted a lot of people into to do some work in the back end because there's a certain set of features that we need to do. It's very helpful to me as an engineering leader to know that
Yeah.
we've got that flex and not having to constantly bring in consultants or experts from. We've got the experts in the house, which is great. I think just another challenge just is around the geography, so the remote and hybrid. We sort of initially, obviously, were coming out of the pandemic where everyone expected to be fully remote now. We're trying to build a hybrid workforce, which we're finding works really well. But obviously we have offices in London, Dundalk, Belfast, so we're trying to get the balance right of having everyone in the office on the right days, making sure that the days people are in the office, we've got plans to make sure we make the most of it rather than just all sitting around with our headphones on. But also making sure that we're, not wasting people's time as well by having them come in when they're not needed. I think my main sort of, advice on that, I suppose, would just be around listening to the team. Don't wait until you've hired the people, but really during the hiring process, understand what people's commitments are, what they're able to do, and what their wishes are as well. Because I've actually been pleasantly surprised how many people are quite keen to get back in the office, especially if it's just for 2-3 days a week. They kind of miss that sort of overheard and sort of base knowledge and just being able to turn around in the chair and ask a question.
Of course.
People are, they relish that if they can do it.
Definitely. Final question from me then. I know you sort of touched on a bit of advice there, so sorry if I'm throwing you under the bus here, but I was going to ask you, what other pieces of advice would you give to startups that are maybe looking to scale their tech teams whilst, still maintaining that strong company culture that you were talking about there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's really the advice I would give really is around talk to other people in the same. I really think what was crucial to me, both as a solo founder, managing 20 people, is that the one thing that's always helped me through the tough spots is finding those people in your network, finding an excuse. It doesn't need to be a big excuse to meet up with them. Everyone's always got time to help. I find people are so helpful. People want to help, and people want to see other people and businesses succeed. So, my big piece of advice would be talk to other people in your network, ideally outside your company. Get a sense of what someone's advice would be from the outside, and obviously I guess it's a two-way street as well. Making yourself available to give advice, give some help when needed as well. I find that's been hugely useful for me.
100%. Fantastic. Well, look, aside from that, I just want to say, look, thanks very much actually for taking the time to meet with me today. It's been great to have you on. As always, I'll be sure to tag both, obviously the business and yourself in the end post. And looking forward to seeing, I suppose you guys continue to make waves.
Brilliant. Thanks very much for having me, Jack. It's been really good to chat. Thank you.
Have a good day. Cheers.